Hi, this is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research, and I'm going to do your daily 5 today. Most of the stocks that I provided over the past few months have been breakout trades. Today, I would like to describe how I trade a pullback. This method can be used as a standalone approach, or it can be used in conjunction with a stock that you're interested in fundamentally. So let's start with the setup criteria. And, I just wanted to make sure I made this pretty clear. I like to use 2 time frames when I trade a pullback. On the left side, I've got the higher time frame, and this can be any 2 time frames that you'd like. A lot of times I'll use it on a monthly chart and a weekly chart. The higher time frame being monthly, lower time frame being weekly. And a lot of times I will also use a weekly higher time frame and daily lower time frame. The strategy works the same, and as I mentioned in my book, you can even use it on a 10-minute chart and a 2-minute chart. So the strategy does really work across multiple time frames. So just to say real quick, the higher time frame is what I would call the trend time frame, and or what we'd call maybe the traded time frame, and that's really where we're looking for our trade. We're looking for the setup. It's kind of meeting the qualifications of a stock that we're interested in, and I always use price and momentum to confirm that. I'm going to give you an example in a second that'll show you, and then we also use the higher time frame to define trend support on a pullback. And I also use the higher time frame to sort of define what your upside is or downside if it's a short trade. But for the most part, on the long side, I'd be using the higher time frame to kind of determine how much upside you have over and beyond the prior high. And then on the lower time frame, we've got what I would call the trigger time frame. And so it really is it's a smaller time frame than the higher one, obviously, and it's currently trading in the opposite direction of the higher time frame. And so the trigger trend really kind of reflects the pullback on the higher time frame. So what we want to do on the lower time frame is make sure we measure the strength of the decline and to really improve our odds that the trend is going to continue back to the upside. And I'm going to use just a long example. The daily 5 I'm using today are all longs. So you want to use this time frame to enter when it starts to look like it's getting back in line, aligning itself back with the higher time frame. So let's go ahead and get into I want to use an example first, and this is HCAT. And so, really what I wanted to explain, so here's the higher time frame. I've got a weekly chart on the left, and then on the right side, I've got a daily chart. And what I'm looking for is, this strong move to the upside here. And notice how MACD makes a strong move to a new high, and ADX confirms with a very strong move well above this 25 line here going horizontal. I like to see it at least above 30, but if we can get it up at 35 or 40, that's even better. And so we're making higher highs and higher lows, and we want to see a strong move to the upside to new highs in price on the higher time frame. And then we're looking for a pullback back towards or in the area of the 18-week moving average. And what I want to see on this time frame is I want to see the 18-week rising, and I want the 40-week rising underneath. And if we have both of those in place and they're rising at about the same rate, we've got a pretty good quality setup in place. It's okay if this overruns the 18 a little bit, but we don't want to see it really fire through this 18 where it starts to roll over. So those are kind of what I would say the criteria that I'm looking for on the higher time frame. On the lower time frame, we want to have that strong reading on the ADX. On the way down during the decline phase and throughout this period here, while it's going down, we want to see low ADX compared to what went in. So I want to see green DI causing a big strong move, or the buyers causing a big strong move to the upside. And then on the decline phase, I want to make sure that the sellers are weaker. I don't want to see a big strong move in red DI and a big strong move in the ADX when it's declining. And so if I have that, I've kind of got criteria that I like from a momentum standpoint that's telling me I've got a strong move to the upside and a pullback to support. And then on the lower time frame, the pullback wasn't that strong, so my bias is still to the upside. So what we're looking for at this point on the lower time frame is a trigger. So we got the trend time frame on the left, the trigger time frame on the right. And so what I do is I'm essentially looking for trend change on this time frame. I mean, you could draw in a trend line and do analysis that way and say I'm breaking the trend line and then I test support, and then coming back up through this high would be kind of like a reversal of the trend back to the upside. A simple way to look at this, though, is we basically want to trigger ourselves back in when we're getting back above both moving averages on the lower time frame. Because here's essentially what's happened. We've got rising moving averages and an 18 above the 40 on the higher time frame. On the lower time frame, the 18 is below the 40 and price is below the 40. So right in this area is where we have the setup. We've come down enough to cause the 18 to cross down below the 40 and price to be below both moving averages. If we have that with the conditions that I mentioned on the higher time frame, we have a setup in place. The trigger takes place, I think, when we cross back and close back above the 40, which is closing back above both moving averages. So I think this is a really good way for you to sort of look at how to use the lower time frame. I mean, the benefits of this, I think, are pretty significant because instead of just buying at the 18 on the weekly on the way down, there are a lot of times, where it just won't turn around and it'll just keep dropping. And just to buy that fade into the moving averages, I think personally carries a lot of risk with it. So we're lowering our risk. I think we're improving our timing because we don't have to wait 4 or 5 weeks. We can wait for this lower time frame to get in gear and then move back to the upside. And then lastly, because we're using the lower time frame to trigger ourselves in, we can use the lower time frame's moving averages to manage the trade. We can also use the higher low that shows up on a daily chart here that's really not reflected on the weekly chart to lower our risk in the trade if we want to. So these are the types of combinations that I would be on the lookout for as you go through and look for pullbacks in uptrends. Let's go ahead and use a few examples. First thing I want to do, I'm going to change this to a monthly and a weekly. And I'm going to use the first example or the first stock for our daily 5 today is a monthly on the left and a weekly on the right. And this is a gold stock. And if you notice, we had this big downtrend and then we went sideways and you got a really strong move, breakout move to the upside. I mean, the breakout trade was down here. But if you notice, we've gotten a pullback back to support with good confirmation on a MACD basis and good strength on an ADX basis. Now we go to the lower time frame and we notice we've got low ADX, meaning on this decline to the downside, we really don't have much selling at all. Red DI couldn't even get above 25. So with that said, I think you can go and draw a trend line in on the price chart. And because it's a weekly, you might even look for a higher bottom to form and maybe wait for a little bit more confirmation. It has made a little bit of a run. It hasn't crossed back above the 40 yet. But I would just say, I'd like to see this maybe pull back one time and then turn back to the upside. But the monthly chart does look good for the bigger picture. I think this is going to emerge out of this at some point. We just want to wait for a little bit more confirmation on the lower time frame. Let's go ahead and switch back. The rest of the charts today are weekly and daily ideas. BLKB, Blackbaud. So on the weekly chart, I've got a strong move to the upside and a consolidation back. I've got pretty good strength on both the MACD and the ADX. And we've gotten more of a horizontal consolidation back to the moving average, but we were clearly overbought up in this region. And now we've worked off that overbought condition by working itself down. If you notice, the 18 crossed back below, we closed back below. And in this, the way this has developed, and I kind of wanted to show some different patterns, because the trigger is always going to be a little bit different. If you notice in this situation, the MACD hasn't even crossed back below the zero line. It's stayed right around the zero line, and this is usually a pretty strong sign. If we can turn up right from here, I would look to trigger right as this breaks back above this trend line. Getting back to 72.5 at this point with a good green bar to the upside, I think would be pretty bullish here. Let's go on to the next one, BHC. This has a little bit of a sharper pullback. And if you notice, this is a little steeper. The MACD overran the zero line to the downside. In this situation, I probably want to see a little bit more confirmation of a rally up and maybe a pullback and a higher low. A little bit more structure on the lower time frame to confirm there's truly a reversal going back up to the upside. But we have good condition in place on this time frame. If you look at this big breakout that's taking place, really good momentum characteristics, and we're back to the moving average here. So that's another one that I think is definitely worth watching. MPC in the energy area. Notice how this stock had rallied up into some resistance here, but it came through a pretty big resistance zone underneath, like a lot of energy stocks, with, again, the momentum characteristics are very good and we're getting a pullback. This, again, came down, but then has been more flat. So I'd be more inclined to be using a trend line like this in this situation. I kind of want to see it kind of break out above this horizontal area. And we don't know how this is going to trade in here or if it's ever going to trigger. It might just keep dropping to the downside. But it is a name I'd watch. There's low ADX showing there's not a lot of selling strength right now. And I do think that's a good sign. Our last stock today is Marriott. And I wanted to use this as an example because it actually has, this is the second trade. If you notice, we had the pullback trade right here. Strong move to the upside, good momentum characteristics, and then we pulled back. And then on this time frame, on the lower time frame, we broke the trend line, and then we kind of made a little dip and pulled back. And that higher low and this green bar would really been the trigger to get in on that trade. Now I think we probably draw another downtrend line in place. And in this situation, we're only working our way back to the zero line. So I would take the trend line break to the upside, back up through 150 with low ADX as a trigger on this stock. So those are the daily 5 today. I hope you enjoyed this segment. You can contact me through LinkedIn, or you can find my research on rabilstockresearch.com. I am, in addition, if you go to rabilstockresearch.com/services for the monthly individual package, you can use the coupon code StockCharts and you'll receive 2 months of my research for $50. Have a great trading day, and I will see you next time.
Hey guys, Dave Keller here with StockCharts.com. Thanks so much for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, and we hope you did, hit the like button right below. Also, we have so much new content every day. Consider subscribing to the channel. Just hit the subscribe button in the video or right below. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Have a fantastic day.